I want you to imagine that you're a kid in 2005.
Hey kids, follow the bouncing plate!
You're chilling at home, flicking through channels, and suddenly you tune into Nickelodeon, and you see a show unlike anything they had ever released before.
100 years ago, a powerful being was frozen alive, and the world fell into darkness. Now he's back for some unfinished business.
Will you go penguin sledding with me?
Meet Aang. He's 12, and he's the only one who can save the world from the forces of destruction. Did we mention that he's 12? Avatar, The Last Airbender. The legend begins whether he's ready or not. Premiering Monday, February 21st at 7/6 Central on Nickelodeon.
Penguin!
Avatar The Last Airbender is an insanely beloved classic on Nickelodeon. It was unlike basically any other animated series at the time. It was dramatic, it had a very grand scale, deep lore, interesting characters, and some beautifully written stories. It has overall gone down as one of the most beloved animated shows ever made, an absolute classic. You could make an amazing video essay going over every single detail about this series to show just how amazing and beautiful it is. And this is not that video essay. Plenty have already made that video essay and other such videos about Avatar. If you want to get your fix for something just absolutely praising Avatar, which I'm not trying to knock by the way, go ahead and check one of those out. But what I want to cover, and what I think you'll get more of a kick out of, is what came after Avatar. You see, Avatar tragically met its end in 2008. May it rest in peace. However, 4 years after its ending, in 2012, which I am just now realizing was 11 years ago, a new show came out that answered the question many fans of the original show had. So, like, who would the Avatar after Aang be?
Long ago, there lived a great Avatar named Aang, master of water, earth, fire, and air. Aang, along with his true love Katara and her brother Sokka, defeated the Fire Lord and brought peace to the four nations.
We shall pay the ultimate price!
Now, 2 generations later, Aang has been reincarnated as Korra.
Who do you think you are?
Why don't you come and find out?
As the next Avatar, she faces a new threat from the mysterious Amon, who has waged war against all benders.
The era of bending is over.
Like the Avatars before, Korra must fight for the freedom of her people
I'm not afraid of anybody!
and bring peace to Republic City.
The revolution is more dangerous than ever.
Brace yourself for an epic new chapter in the Avatar saga.
Benders need to understand there's no place for you anymore.
You're on the path to Korra on Nicktoons. Now, back to Nicktoons Prime Time.
Legend of Korra takes place 70 years after the ending of Avatar, and follows Korra, obviously, the reincarnation of the Avatar, as she faces many trials and tribulations in this familiar yet new world. What I find fascinating about this show is that it was made by primarily the same staff. It continues off the original show's narrative, yet manages to still, open itself up for new viewers not familiar with the original show, doing everything right, everything a sequel should do, setting itself up to be another classic. This show is far more divided. There's one half of the fan base that will tell you that this show is amazing, one of the best cartoons ever made, right up there with Avatar, some even saying it goes as far as to be better than Avatar, while others say it's absolutely terrible, taints the original show. It doesn't even deserve to be mentioned in the same breath as Avatar The Last Airbender. So, what happened here? How can a show that seemed to be set up for success, a show that literally had everything going for it, become so divided? Today, I want to answer that question. Today, I want to find out what happened to the Legend of Korra. Legend of Korra introduces us to the new developments in the Avatar world since the ending of the 100-Year War. Apparently, after the war, Aang and the gang founded the United Republic of Nations and built Republic City, a massive city for benders and non-benders alike from all different cultures to live together, and is run by a council of 4 officials from each nation. This season also introduces us to Korra, obviously, and they make it immediately clear Korra is completely different from Aang. Unlike Aang, she can easily bend 3 of the 4 elements, and she is completely ecstatic to be the Avatar. She also doesn't need to search the world to find her teachers. Instead, the White Lotus, a previously secret society, brings her teachers, meaning she's also incredibly sheltered. This is actually a great way to reintroduce us to the world and to all the new developments. It's Korra's first time seeing most of this stuff too. Meanwhile, Aang wasn't very sheltered and was actually pretty well traveled, but he was frozen for 100 years, so he had a pretty good excuse to not know how things work anymore. Korra's also pretty hot-headed, and she usually acts without thinking, so, very different from Aang. I can definitely see how some people can find her annoying, but I don't know. I like her. I think she's fun. We also get introduced to Aang's son, Tenzin, one of the council members at Republic City. He's also got a pregnant wife named Pema, and kids named Milo, Iki, and Jinora, who range from annoying to situationally funny.
You must promise me that your teenage years won't be like this.
I will make no such promises.
Tenzin is also the one who needs to teach Korra airbending, which he says he needs to delay because of Republic City, so she just follows him to Republic City to kindly ask him to reconsider.
Katara agreed with me that I should come. She said my destiny is in Republic City.
Don't bring my mother into this!
And once she does move to Republic City, she also joins a pro-bending team, which is a sport. And when she joins the team, she gains 2 new friends, Mako and Bolin, a firebending and earthbending brotherly duo. These characters also serve as love interests. Yay! But anyway, Mako and Bolin are the most simple, comedic archetype in history. Mako is the serious one, and Bolin is the funny one. The last person to become a part of Team Avatar 2.0 is Asami, who's the daughter of a rich car and machine manufacturer. Oh, also I should mention Lin Beifong, the chief of police at Republic City, who's a metal bender and Toph's daughter, and also arrests Korra her first day there. The last thing I need to introduce you to is the Equalists and their leader, Amon. You see, while Korra thought that everyone in Republic City was living it up and that benders and non-benders were completely equal, this is not true. In fact, there's a rising number of non-benders joining the Equalists, an extremist movement that demands equality for both benders and non-benders. And you might say, well, that seems all well and good. How are these guys the bad guys? They just want equality, right? And to that I say, don't talk over me. You're very annoying. You see, the reason they're the bad guys is not because of the whole equality thing, but it's more the fact that they also want to wipe benders off of the face of the planet. How do they plan on doing this? Well, after kidnapping Bolin and Korra and Mako having to do some detective work to find him, Korra and Mako discover that Amon somehow has gained the ability to steal someone's bending, much like Aang did at the end of Avatar. He even does the same forehead touch thing, that's pretty cool. And even though Bolin does get rescued before Amon takes his bending, Korra and basically everyone else is now terrified because now Amon could take anyone's bending, even Korra's. And you know what? I really like this setup. Not only is seeing a new progressed version of the Avatar world really cool, I really love the whole steampunk vibe it had. I also like how it takes advantage of its new, more modern setting to tell a story that, while not as grand as Aang's adventure, feels a little more real, if that makes sense. I also like how in this new setting they have to get more into the politics of the Avatar, which I know sounds like the most boring sentence in the world, but it's actually really cool. And watching the tension between benders and non-benders get higher and higher, the Equalist getting more bolder and more powerful, and seeing how Korra has to slowly overcome her fear of Amon to face him is really cool. They also introduced some pretty cool twists in the series, like the fact that Asami's father is actually working for the Equalists, developing things like these big mecha CGI suits. And this reveal is really sad because Asami had a really good relationship with her dad, and he always seemed like a really nice guy. There's also this waterbender Tarlok, who's one of the 4 council members I mentioned before, who is constantly trying to become just as bold as Amon, to meet him at his own level. It becomes so intense that he actually inadvertently begins proving Amon right, because he begins oppressing non-benders, which, you know, is kind of what Amon is fighting against. There are a few flaws I have with this season. One of the biggest being is that once Korra gets to Republic City, that is the only place that matters. We basically don't see any of the other 4 nations except the Water Tribe. Which, obviously, I get Amon isn't trying to take over the world or anything, which means he's a bit more of a small-scale threat, and he's really only attacking Republic City so far. But travel and the whole world and the way it works was such a big part of Avatar that it's kind of weird that we don't really see it much. But at least what's happening in Republic City is, you know, interesting. Rising political tensions and tensions between benders and non-benders. Amon even ends up attacking things like the pro-bending stadium, which takes away one of Korra and her friends' only, like, positive things.
One of them is in the booth with me right now, folks. He is leveling one of those glove devices at me now, and I believe he is about to electrocute me. I am currently wetting my pants.
And also, Korra still can airbend, which is pretty important. I really like how they managed to make Amon feel so threatening and untouchable without making him just a super powerful bender or anything. Amon is untouchable not only because he can steal bending and is just a skilled combatant, he's also untouchable because he's just clever and smart. Hell, after Korra discovers that Tarlok is a bloodbender, he kidnaps her and takes her to some remote cabin with a plan to just escape and go completely off the grid. Amon shows up and reveals that he can even resist bloodbending. And after Korra escapes, Amon goes into his endgame as he completely assaults Republic City with bombs and airships and basically takes it over. He even put a mask over the Aang statue. That's how you know he's serious. And after all this, Mako and Korra go in for a final battle with Amon. But before we get into this, I do have to mention the big triangle-shaped elephant in the room. There's no getting around it. The people working on Legend of Korra, for some reason, decided to add in one of the most annoying tropes in media history, a love triangle. Specifically, a love triangle between Mako, Korra, and Asami, and also Bolin, but he's bumped out of it pretty quickly. Just like every other show that forces in this annoying trope, it's completely unneeded and just makes me hate everyone. Except Bolin, because he's just like the most innocent guy who just gets his heart broken. It just baffles me why this is here. Who watched Avatar and said, man, I love Avatar The Last Airbender, but it would be way better with a fucking love triangle? I don't know why people keep insisting on forcing this trope into everything that doesn't need it. Avatar was never a master of romance or anything. It's actually one of the only things in the show I find that the fandom is a little split on. Some hate the romance in Avatar and think characters like Aang and Katara have about as much chemistry as my 3rd grade science project. I did not have a 3rd grade science project. Meanwhile, others think it's, a cute, harmless addition. However, very little will tell you that the romance in Avatar was the best thing about it. So why do you put so much focus on it in Legend of Korra? Sure, yes, it's still not the main focus of the show, thank God, but it has way more focused than Katara and Aang or Sokka and Suki. This is the first big criticism of Korra that I just 100% get. Like, I just understand it. I have never enjoyed this part of the show. It's always just got on my nerves. And luckily it does stop being such a big focus later on, but it's never 100% gone. It's like glitter. You throw it in a room and it's never fully gone. You know, you're still gonna be finding little specks of glitter 7 years later. Doesn't matter how much you sweep, it's always there. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically what the love triangle in Legend of Korra is like. Again, this is the first criticism that I just fully get. I just fully understand it. But now that this rant is over, let's get back and let me tell you how Season 1 ends. The big ending to Korra first reveals us Amon's backstory. Apparently, Amon is actually Tarlok's brother, and apparently they're both sons of a gang leader from Republic City's history, and this gang leader became so powerful because he had the special ability to bloodbend whenever he wanted. When Avatar established pretty clearly that you needed a full moon to bloodbend. So being able to bloodbend at any point is kind of a big deal. Luckily though, after Aang remembers that he's the Avatar, he takes Yakon's bending away. So Yakon did the only logical thing in this scenario. He had surgery to look like a completely different person, ran away to a water tribe, and had 2 sons to teach his powerful bloodbending to so he could raise them to basically be his soldiers to take down Aang and get revenge on Republic City. One of those sons was Tarlok, and the other one was Noatuk, who would later become Amon. Noatuk eventually turned on Yakon and shattered his dreams of revenge before running away, and he would eventually become Amon and found the Equalists. Amon might be a fraud, but because of the abuse he's been through, and because of basically all of Avatar history, Amon genuinely believes bending is the source of all evil. So even though he is a waterbender, and he lied about his backstory, he does genuinely believe in the message he's telling, which I think is kind of cool. And his backstory is genuinely kind of tragic. Another thing I like is that Tarlok apologizes for being such an asshole. Like, he straight up says sorry and says that he was really just trying to do what he thought was best. And I don't know, I think that's cool. It shows a new side of Tarlok. Up until now he seemed kind of dickish, and it seemed like he must have had some ulterior motive or something, but no, he was just trying to do what he thought was right, but went about it wrong. The final confrontation with Amon culminates in Korra having her bending taken away, Mako nearly having his bending taken away, but right before it happens, Korra airbends, and that causes Amon to be flung through a window and fall in water, which causes the scar under his mask to be revealed to just be makeup, and him to waterbend to save himself, revealing that he's a bender, which completely undermines his whole revolution. But even though his entire revolution is completely undermined, he does manage to escape with Tarlok. And you know, it seems like they really are gonna get away, probably in hiding for some kind of future plot.
It will be just like the good old days.
Jesus. Okay, so Amon and Tarlok are definitely dead, and I believe this is actually one of the main things that divides the fan base. Because this, right here, this season, this is all Legend of Korra was supposed to be originally. And on its own, yeah, it's pretty fucking good in my opinion. It is nowhere near the nigh perfection that Avatar was, but I definitely say this season on its own is a worthy successor. It legitimately is a cool idea to see the future of the Avatar world and the new ideas and conflicts a new time period can bring. Again, it has problems. Avatar was all about travel and seeing the world, and Legend of Korra's first season at least just takes place in Republic City. That's it. But if this was just a mini-series, I don't think it would be a big deal. You know, 12 episodes isn't exactly as much to tell a story as 61. So those 13 episodes just being a little epilogue that shows us Republic City and a bit of a glimpse into the future of the Avatar world would have been fine. However, as you can probably guess by the runtime of this video, after they finished airing Season 1, Nick turned to the crew and said, "So, what do you have in mind for Season 2? Okay, so season 2 of Legend of Korra is a little bit of a shit show. I think this is the season that is the most infamous. Ask any of the people who hate the show why they hate it, and they'll probably point to something from this season. If you want to know how hated this season was, I was actually shocked to discover how many fans it had. Hell, I saw people who thought Korra was shit, but season 2 was okay, which is the strangest opinion to me. Like, I feel like that opinion is just especially odd. But I guess even the most unanimously hated things do have fans. So you know what? Fair on them. I respect you for sticking to your guns. So anyway, Legend of Korra Season 2 is kinda fucking shit. Yeah, sorry to remind you guys, but I am not one of those fans. I think this series is a massive dip in quality. So, the plot of this season is that Korra has to become more in touch with her spirituality, despite the fact that that was already kind of the plot of Season 1? Isn't part of the plot of Season 1 that she's gotten really good at the fighting side of being Avatar, but not the spiritual side? And that's why she's not great with airbending? I guess that doesn't matter. She still really hadn't mastered spirituality by the end of Season 1, so it's fine to continue that character arc. Here we also learn that Tenzin is kind of really bad at teaching spirituality, because as we later learn, he doesn't know shit about it. He's never even been to the spirit realm before. To be honest, I actually kinda like that. Another thing I like are his two siblings, Bumi and Kaya. Bumi was an extremely minor character from Season 1. He appeared once, right at the end. But now he's a main character, and he's really fun. He's one of the very few times I think an annoying character is done right. You see, a lot of writers don't seem to understand that usually when you're writing an annoying character, they're supposed to be annoying to the characters, or sometimes a specific character, but not the audience. And Bumi is a good example of that. Bumi is hilarious, but he annoys the absolute shit out of Tenzin. Now, on the other hand, there's not much to say about Kaya. I think the best way to describe her is like a hippie, I guess. Every now and then she'll have a line about auras and crystals and all that. I guess she's also like kinda motherly. So those are his two siblings summed up, and I think they really have a great dynamic. They really work well off each other. Alright, so let's get back to Korra now. Coincidentally, as she's struggling with spirituality, there's a festival in the Southern Water Tribe coming up. And at this festival is where we meet Unalaq, Korra's uncle. And Unalaq has a very tense relationship with his brother, Korra's father, Tonraq. Unalaq is all about tradition. He is disgusted with the fact that this festival has become basically a carnival, and he believes the fact that these traditions are being changed or sometimes abandoned altogether is what's causing the spirits to attack. Meanwhile, Tonraq believes that traditions can change and progress, and that it's not the end of the world if a tradition is left behind. Unalaq does manage to give himself quite a bit more legitimacy whenever he's the only one who can handle a rebel spirit attacking the festival. And he doesn't kill the spirit or anything, no, he spirit bends it to kind of purify it, showing that unlike Tenzin, Unalaq is extremely in touch with the spirit world. And after Korra sees this and sees how powerless basically all of her other mentors or parental figures were in a spirit attack, she decides to take Unalaq on as her spiritual teacher. However, Unalaq has an ulterior motive. He wants to use Korra to open the two spirit portals, because he has this whole plan to unite and bring balance to the water tribes and the world. And just to tell you, spirits are the name of the game here. They are focused on way more than anywhere else in the entire Avatar franchise. And side note, I've always found it a little weird that this franchise focuses so little on spirits, since the Avatar's whole thing is that they're the bridge between spirits and humans. But that's neither here, nor there, nor up there, nor down there. I just think it's cool that we're finally getting a plot that focuses on spirits. And yeah, this is a pretty cool setup for a plot. A whole season just focusing on spirits in their world isn't a bad idea, and the style the dark spirits are animated in is just so fucking cool. I genuinely love that they're animated in such a different style than the normal show, portraying just how otherworldly they are in comparison to everything else. It's genuinely an amazing visual, and also in general, the animation of this season is just so fluid. I can't lie, this season looks really good. In fact, this goes for basically every season. Every season, especially the fight scenes, looks gorgeous. It's not very common, especially in American animation, to see characters that are this detailed animated so fluidly. The animation is the one thing I can say never really falters. It's always very fluid and quite ambitious a lot of the time. However, what I will complain about is, of course, the drop in quality that is this season. I would like to mention that there's just this really uninteresting subplot with Bolin and Korra's cousin Eska that's just not very interesting. Eska's whole thing is that she's very intense and domineering and treats Bolin more like a slave than a boyfriend, and when Bolin, breaks it off, Eska goes crazy, and I don't care. Eska does not have that much character, neither does her twin brother Desna. But back to Korra's plot. After she manages to open the spirit portal, she returns to discover that Unalaq's navy has just shown up in the Southern Water Tribe and has basically just done a hostile takeover in the name of reuniting them. So she begins to realize that Unalaq may not be the best guy, but you want to know who is the best guy, and is probably my favorite part of this season? Varric. You see, after last season, Asami was put in charge of Future Industries, her father's company, and Future Industries, after being associated with Amon and the Equalist, is in a bit of a tough spot. So she, with the help of Bolin, goes to this guy named Varric, an extremely rich guy from the Southern Water Tribe, and he is, again, the best part of this season. And after Unalaq's navy shows up and blocks basically all the boats in from leaving, Varric decides that he can't take no more and forms a rebellion to try and deal with Unalaq, which Korra stops, worried that her father was a part of it. He wasn't, but he still gets put on trial alongside the other people who definitely did try to kill Unalaq, but luckily, in Unalaq's infinite mercy, he manages to convince the judge to take the charges down from, death sentence to just life in prison. And there's a subplot here that I have never really understood, and that's the whole idea that Unalaq presents that Korra should stay neutral. And what I find weird about this is that Korra should know by now that this isn't a conflict that she should just stay neutral in. There's a pretty clear good and bad guy here. And I find it weird that in this season, he never once tries to convince Korra to stay neutral by using the fact that they're family. Hell, I forget that Unalaq is Korra's uncle half the time. It's barely mentioned. And I get that the whole point of this subplot is that Korra comes to the conclusion that there is an obvious bad guy and that she shouldn't stay neutral, but I don't think this subplot really makes sense because Korra's never struggled determining the bad guy before. It's always bothered me that Korra, for some reason, struggles with neutrality now on a conflict that she obviously shouldn't. I should also mention, by the way, Varric doesn't get arrested. He just goes into hiding with his servant. Oh yeah, he's got a servant named Julie. And it's lucky that Varric did go into hiding, because he ends up getting them all back to Republic City and freeing Korra's dad so he can go back and fight the war with Unalaq. Meanwhile, everyone else returns to Republic City, mainly to try and get support from the Republic City military, which isn't very effective. The president doesn't want to hear Korra out at all, despite the rising tensions between tribes and even the bombing of their culture center at Republic City, even though the bombers weren't really dressed like water tribes, and Mako saw them using some strange detonator for the bombs. Oh yeah, Mako's a cop now, by the way. I forgot to mention it since it hadn't really been relevant up until now. But his whole subplot this season is he just finds these terrorist attacks on the culture center and boats being sent to try and bring aid to the water tribe. Odd. He doesn't think it's the North like everyone else does. Another subplot here is Bolin becoming a mover star. Basically, in this world, Varric invented the movie and is now using his technology to make propaganda films that make Bolin famous. And exactly what you'd think would happen in a subplot like this happens. Bolin gets a big head and starts being a jerk to Mako and is just weird around his co-star Ruby. He's constantly flirting with her even though she's clearly not interested in him. And despite, acting himself, he doesn't seem to understand that she's just pretending to be his love interest because she's acting. This subplot is already annoying and makes Bolin kind of a dick, but this shit is just especially weird and out of character for him. Bolin ain't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he never seemed this clueless. Feels like a very big misinterpretation of his character, even though I'm pretty sure not much has changed in the writer's room between Season 1 and Season 2. At least, to my knowledge, not much has changed. Anyway, while this is all going on, Korra breaks up with Mako because he snitched on her to the president, and then she just decides she's gonna go there herself, but midway through that travel, she gets attacked by Desna and Eska, and then a large spirit monster, which nearly kills her. She then wakes up on an island with amnesia, and is discovered by the Fire Sages from the original series, who help her get back in connection with her avatar spirit in past lives. That's definitely not foreboding. And we get to meet the first avatar, Juan. And to be honest, I really like his character. He reminds me of Aladdin, with the whole fact that we're introduced to him being chased for stealing bread because he can't afford any. The only difference between Juan and Aladdin is that Juan actually has human friends. We're also introduced to the fact that he's very selfless, as he sacrifices the food that he was going to eat just to feed some animals. And here, in this backstory, we are introduced to probably the two biggest retcons in the Avatar franchise, and also two of the biggest points of contention in Legend of Korra. The first one being that back in ancient times, humans used to live on the big lion turtles that we see at the end of Avatar, and if they asked very politely, the lion turtles would give them bending, but they'd have to give it back once they were done with whatever they needed it for. But Juan tricks the lion turtle and doesn't give the fire bending back. Instead, he uses it to try and fight against the very oppressive rulers that control his town, and when he kind of fails, he's banished. He is allowed to keep the fire bending though, which is good, and he goes out there, lives in this sanctuary with his best spirit friend for a little while, and then he journeys out and finds the other biggest retcon in this season, Rava and Vatu, the light and dark, good and evil spirits. But wait a minute, YouTuber Emerald the Artist. Didn't Ko the Face Stealer in the original Avatar The Last Airbender series airing on Nickelodeon, Book 1, Episode 20, The Siege of the North at around 14 minutes and 21 seconds say this? What? Why was that so specific?
I need to find the moon and the ocean.
Their spirit names are Twi and La. Push and pull. Twi and La. They balance each other. Push and pull, life and death, good and evil, yin and yang.
The koi fish!
Okay, so yes, he did say this. I don't fully get how Twi and La fit into this. Maybe I'm stupid or something, but this just feels like a pretty blatant retcon, which I don't think I'd mind as much if they had better designs. I respect these abstract designs, but I just don't like them. Going back to Twi and La, despite them being just koi fish, I always liked the designs that they're the yin and yang symbol. Meanwhile here they're just the same base, just recolored with the good colors and the evil colors. And I don't know, I'm just not a fan of the whole kite design that they went with here. Again, I respect them for trying to be more abstract, but I'm just not a fan of the direction they took. But anyway, Vaatu tricks Wan into freeing him, which is a very bad thing, as you can tell. And eventually Rava realizes the only way she's gonna beat Vaatu is with Wan's help. And so they travel to the other lion turtles to get the other elements, training together so they can be ready for harmonic convergence, which is apparently when Rava and Vaatu will have a big battle. And at that battle, Wan kinda gets his ass kicked until he permanently bonds with Rava, and then he seals Vaatu in a tree and closes the spirit portal, saying that all spirits have to return to the spirit world and that spirits and humans need to be separate. And after many years of dedicating himself to bringing balance, he dies and is reincarnated for the first time, beginning the Avatar cycle. I quite liked this backstory. I liked Wan as a character, and I thought it was really interesting getting to see the Avatar's ancient times. Even though, obviously, I'm not the biggest fan of all the retcons introduced, I still think it's a pretty good story on its own. I also really like this art style for it. The characters look like normal Avatar characters, but like the backgrounds and stuff are more in that ancient Japanese, I think, art style. You know what I'm talking about. Very sorry if I got the location wrong. I'm sure one of you will correct me. But yeah, overall this little flashback is cool. After this flashback, Korra wakes up and reunites with Tenzin and his family, who I haven't really mentioned. Tenzin, Bumi, Kaya, and basically his whole family were like on a road trip to the air temples, and they established that Tenzin's eldest daughter, Jinora, is very in tune with spirits, unlike him. Anyway, yeah, Korra meets up with them and, catches them up on the civil war and impending apocalypse.
I knew this would happen.
And decides that they have to get to the spirit realm to stop Unalaq's plan. And after quite a few attempts where Tenzin just blames everyone but himself, he reveals that he's never been to the spirit realm before. In fact, it seems like he's just not cut out to go to the spirit realm this way. No, in fact, they decide that Jinora is the one who will have to guide Korra through the spirit realm. That's right, Tenzin's kid actually has something to do. So Jinora guides Korra to the spirit realm to, close the southern portal, stop Unalaq's plan, all that, but they get split up basically immediately. Great job, guys. Korra ends up getting lost in this weird forest and turning into a kid, but she also runs into Iroh, who is probably the best character to run into when you're having troubles like this. And he of course gives her the trademark perfect Iroh wisdom, as well as a task to climb up the mountain, believing that if she accomplishes her task up there, she might find her way to where she needs to go. And it does. It helps her become more attuned with her spiritual side, and also helps her find Vaatu in the portals, which is rather unfortunate, because Jinora was kidnapped by Unalaq and uses that as a way to force Korra to open the northern portal, which is the exact opposite of what she was supposed to do. And as the previous harmonic convergence we saw isn't the best thing. What makes this even worse is that Korra is sent back to the human world. However, Jinora is trapped there in the spirit world, meaning that Tenzin, Bumi, and Kaya have to save her. By the way, during all of this, Mako continues his investigation into the strange terrorist attacks and attacks on ships bringing aid to the Southern Water Tribe, and he discovers that he was right. It wasn't the Northern Water Tribe doing these. It was Varric. And that's why I'm telling you, Varric is the best part of this season. It's not just because he's funny, even though he is funny. Varric is paying people to commit acts of terror disguised as the Northern Tribe, so Republic City will join the war and he can profit from it. That's right, this silly, goofy inventor is actually a war prophet here. And after Mako finds this out, Varric tries to frame him, which, well, doesn't turn out very well because after Varric attempts to kidnap the president, Bolin stops him, and then one of his own men exposes Varric, causing him to be arrested. And he is thrown in the nicest fucking jail cell in history. And you know what? Maybe Norway is on to something, because he has the quickest turnaround. When Korra shows up to try and get some answers and possibly some help out of him, he not only apologizes, kind of, he also gives them his warship and everything on it. Which, you know, will come in handy as Unalaq and his military have taken over the south completely, meaning that they'll have to take on quite an army of both, you know, soldiers and spirits, which they, fail at, and only managed to escape because Boomy got his ass kicked before he even managed to get to the battlefield. Unfortunately, them being freed isn't enough, as Unalaq manages to free Vaatu, revealing that his plan is to fuse with Vaatu and become a dark avatar, and bring about an age of darkness for balance, I guess? And the freeing of Vaatu leads to what I think is the most controversial moment in Avatar history. Rava is basically pulled out of Korra and then is completely destroyed, causing Korra to lose connection with all of her past lives, basically resetting the Avatar cycle, which is probably the biggest fuck up in history since, well, since Wan released Vaatu in the first place. And after that, Vaatu and Unalaq fuse and turn into a massive kaiju squid human thing and just begin fucking shit up. Korra is obviously both a little disadvantaged and a little discouraged, since she's kind of fucked this up beyond all recognition. But with some help and encouragement from Tenzin, she manages to focus her cosmic energy and becomes a massive light kaiju monster to beat the shit out of Unalaq and, well, not destroy Vaatu, obviously. They say that that's really impossible, but, you know, stop their plan of bringing about an age of darkness. And after the smoke is clear, she doesn't do anything to close the spirit portals again. In fact, she agrees with Unalaq's point that closing the spirit portals was a mistake that Wan made, and that he shouldn't have done it. And she says that once again, the spirit and human worlds are united, and everyone will basically have to get used to it. She brings about a new spiritual age that will be quite important to the plot of next season. I feel like the main thing Season 2 was trying to do was recapture Avatar's sense of scale. That was kind of Season 1's main problem, as I mentioned. It didn't feel grand, it was just Republic City, basically. But I feel like one of the problems that came with this season is that, well, it wasn't planned at all, so it feels incredibly disconnected from Season 1. You're telling me that the Equalists just went away after Amon fled? I get that the whole movement was, like, undermined because Amon was a waterbender, but, like, you're telling me that problem is just gone now. Instead, this is a whole new story with a whole new villain that has nothing to do with the Equalists. It feels like overall that season didn't really matter. The only changes it brings about is that Tenzin isn't a council member anymore because the council doesn't exist. And now there's a president. And the president is just a dick, mind you. Like, he is just an asshole most of the time. But yeah, I feel like that's the big problem with this season. It just feels completely separate from Season 1. It doesn't feel like it was led into at all, because it really wasn't. Another problem, I'm sure you're probably sick of hearing by now, is the retcons that it brings about. I don't think they're absolutely terrible, they don't destroy the world for me, but I can see how they can annoy some people. Originally it was said that people learned bending from the animals, but now the lion turtles gave people bending, but they kinda tried to explain it that the lion turtles gave people bending, but they learned how to use it from the animals. But that is so clearly not what was originally intended. But I will say, and I know this is heresy among some people, Season 2 really isn't as bad as I remember. I went into this season for this video thinking it was going to be hot dog shit, that it was the worst thing to ever come from the Avatar franchise. besides the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and that it was just terrible. But coming in, it's like bad, but it's not terribly offensive. It doesn't absolutely baffle me with every step of writing. It's just kind of bad. I feel like another flaw is Unalaq as a villain. Amon wasn't a perfect character or anything, but he felt fleshed out. He felt real. He had a backstory, he had hopes and dreams, he had morals, and Unalaq just feels kind of like Fire Lord Ozai, except instead of wanting conquest, Unalaq wants balance. And it makes him really underwhelming when we just had a pretty in-depth villain with a lot of interesting factors to such a generic, shallow villain. Again, I forget he is Korra's uncle half the time. They really don't do anything with that. I think it would have been really funny if he was like an uncle to Korra. You know, he was kind of like fun and cool, but you know, he still had his traditional aspects as well. But no, he's just her uncle, and they barely even mention it. And he also just feels out of place in comparison to everyone else. The whole theme of Legend of Korra's villains is that they all have like understandable morals, but they just take it too far. Sure, maybe balance is an understandable moral, but all Unalaq does is want to end the world, basically. And ending the world and taking over the world are probably the most generic villain motivations you can have. So yeah, Legend of Korra Season 2, not great, but not as absolutely horrible as I remember it being, to be honest. It had Varric, so that's a plus. But wouldn't you know, they make the same mistake again, because this very much feels like it was written just in case they didn't get a Season 3, which they did. And while you may think such a decision would lead to another, weird kind of train wreck of a season, I actually think that the next season is the greatest season in Legend of Korra. So, let's not dilly-dally. Let's move on to Season 3. Finally out of the slump and into something truly amazing. Season 3 introduces us to the biggest consequence of harmonic convergence, besides the spirits hanging out everywhere and spirit vines covering half of Republic City. That consequence is that airbenders are back. Suddenly, overnight, a bunch of people can suddenly airbend, including Tenzin's brother Boomy, and also some guy who kicks Mako's shit in with a door. Soon Korra and everyone figure out that by bringing balance to the world and connecting the spirit and human realm once again, it's caused airbenders to return to restore balance to, well, bending. Meaning that overnight, people all over the world have suddenly become airbenders, which is not great news, considering that this mysterious fella Zahir has airbending now, and considering the fact that he was put in such a high-security prison, that's probably not good news. Also, right before he escapes, he mentions
Guru Lahima.
And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to be hearing that name a lot. Zahir also, after he escapes, begins using his airbending to break all of his friends out of prison, which is just even worse news. Meanwhile, Korra and everyone go on a trip around the world in an airship to try and get as many airbenders as they can to join them and become air nomads. And let me tell you, Tenzin is really good at convincing them.
You'll never have to worry about your worldly possessions again, because you won't have any. You'll get to shave your head. Your best friend will be a giant bison.
Okay, so actually he sucks absolute dog shit at it. Once again, Tenzin is bad at something that doesn't directly involve airbending or wise comments. Shocking, I know. Actually, he's not even very good at teaching airbending. And after trying a new strategy, they meet Kai, a little kid who's gained airbending. He originally claims to be an orphan being chased by bandits, but he's actually a thief who was adopted by a nice rich family that he robbed. And listen, kid, that is objectively the worst way to really squeeze money out of a rich family. If you've been adopted by a nice rich family, it's probably a good idea to simply, suck up to them and grow a bond with them so they'll financially support you in the future. You'll get more money that, you know what, I should stop talking before I sound like a psychopath. Anyway, despite being a bit of a brat, he goes with them and becomes a love interest for Jinora. Give Tenzin's other kids something to do, please. I don't even know why Iki and Milo are in the show most of the time. They barely do anything. Jinora is the only one who ever does anything or gets any kind of development. Iki and Milo are either annoying or boring. They have one or two funny lines or genuine developments in the entire series. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Anywho, yeah, Kai joins up with them, and they go to Ba Sing Se to find more airbenders. And if you know anything about Ba Sing Se, it's that
there's no war in Ba Sing Se.
Okay, yes, you know that. But more broadly, you know that Ba Sing Se is just where shit goes down, and it's overall just like always a shady place. And usually the royals aren't the most competent, but I'd take the previous Earth King over the new queen, who's just a total fucking bitch. She's super obnoxious, snooty, and condescending. She literally has a trapdoor in front of her throne like Mr. Burns. It's also implied that she might have eaten Bosco, the Earth King's bear. It's just like a rumor we hear guards talk about, but like, still, it's kind of fucked up that that's even in the realm of possibility. And also, even worse, as we learn later after Mako and Bolin meet up with their family, she's kidnapping Earthbenders. You see, Kai does the, like, obvious thing and just tries to rob them and then run away to never be seen again, but he gets kidnapped, along with a bunch of other people who she kidnapped to train them to become soldiers for her. And considering the fact that Kai is here, that probably also means she's kidnapping children, which means she has child soldiers. So, the Queen is a war criminal, officially. This woman could not be more comically evil. This is approaching like Ozai levels of burning his son's face because he talked back to him in a meeting. Except Ozai did not have this over-the-top personality. Later this season, Zahir kills her, and they portray the scene as really sinister and a truly evil thing for Zahir to do. And yeah, the way he kills her is cruel, but also, I want her to die. She was kidnapping and enslaving her citizens, once again, including kids like Kai, to become soldiers. As well, she straight up lied to Korra's face about it. Frankly, she kinda deserved it. I get that it's like, the point is that the place descends into chaos without any kind of government. You know, Zahir is kinda missing the forest for the trees here. But I don't know, the chaos honestly may be preferable to a fucking tyrant like this. But anyway, let's move back a bit. That's in the future. Right now, Korra and the gang figure out what's going on and decide to help out these Earthbenders, which, of course, gets her on the Earth Queen's shit list. Meanwhile, Zahir continues breaking out his allies, like Pali, a combustion bender, Gazan, an earthbender and lava bender, and Minghua, a waterbender who uses her waterbending to replace her arms with weird water tentacles. Which, fun fact, was inspired by a joke pitch for Season 2 about Amon surviving the whole explosive murder-suicide, but losing his arms and having to replace them with water ones. This has no relevance, I just like to share things. After Team Avatar 2.0 manages to save the kidnapped airbenders, they're sent to Air Temple Island. Willingly, by the way. They like, choose to go. And Tenzin and Jinora go there to help train them all. Meanwhile, Korra and the rest of the gang head to Zaofu, that place I mentioned earlier that's a big metal city with domes that protect it from attacks and danger in general. Unfortunately, the leader of Zaofu, Su Yin, and Lin, who joined the crew, I forgot to mention that, have some bad history. They're sisters, and Lin really hates her. Like, she really does not like Su Yin at all. Mainly because of things she did in the past. Not only being a getaway driver for some criminals, but also in the ensuing arrest of her and the criminals, she accidentally gave Lin her scar, and Toph had to send her away, which Su Yin kinda saw as her breaking up the family. And let me tell you, as a sibling myself, I deeply relate to this line from Bolin.
Should I stop them?
You don't have any siblings. Fighting is all part of the healing process.
Oh, by the way, I should mention, our favorite little war prophet here, Varric, is there now. Anyway, while Lynn and the gang are working on their issues, Zahir, after a quick shave and haircut, infiltrates the Airbenders as a way to get to Korra. Fortunately, not only does he learn that Korra won't be joining them, he's also recognized by Kaya, though he does manage to escape. Back at Zaofu, Korra becomes the first metal-bending avatar while training with Su Yin, and Lin goes through acupuncture to help work through her issues, and after some complications, she actually manages to make up with Su Yin and begin moving on. I should also mention, by the way, the Airbender at Zaofu is Su Yin's daughter, Opal. She becomes Bolin's main love interest, like he doesn't get another one after this, thank God. We also get to see Tenzin do a less than stellar job training the Airbenders, as he first bores them, then, as per Bumi's suggestion, and later to his dismay, he begins acting like a boot camp instructor. But that also isn't very effective. Luckily, he eventually does figure it out, with the help of Jinora, who's very eager to become a master and get her tattoos. After this, Korra and Zahir finally meet. Kind of. Korra's unconscious for most of it, as Zahir manages to somehow sneak into this supposedly impenetrable city and nearly kidnaps Korra, which we learn is the second time he tried something like this, as he also tried to kidnap Korra shortly after she was born and discovered to be the Avatar. And that's the reason given as to why she was so isolated compared to the other avatars. Not only did they try to kidnap her, but nobody knows why they kidnapped her. They never answered any questions or anything. And I think this little mystery actually makes them a lot more intimidating. Not only are these guys very clearly dangerous, we also have no idea why they want Korra, which leaves our minds to fill in the blanks and speculate. You know, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive for something. Anyway, these guys manage to nearly get away with Korra, but everyone manages to just barely stop them and save her. After this, the gang discovers that Aiwei, a truthseer and Su Yin's advisor, is a terrorist and a spy, and he's the one who let Zahir and his friends in. And after they track him down to another town where he's not really trying to keep a low profile, like he doesn't change his outfit or anything, and then they follow him into the spirit realm where he's meeting Zahir. And after Zahir, deals with Aiwei, him and Korra have their first proper confrontation. And he's like genuinely so polite. He not only agrees to answer any questions Korra has, he also compliments her and seems to at least have some amount of respect for her. I really like the way Zahir is characterized. It is legitimately such a unique way to write a villain. Not many villains are genuinely just polite. And while, yes, he is partly just talking with Korra to buy time for his friends to kidnap her, he also just is really polite to anyone who is not a royal or just government figure.
You can't be in here! No need for alarm. I just need to make an announcement to the entire city. How do I do that? Ming Hua, please. We're here to help citizens like him, not hurt them. Now, can you help me?
Actually, this goes for the whole Red Lotus. All of them are written like normal people, especially Ghazan. Ghazan also feels like just a normal guy. He even makes small talk and jokes around with Bolin when they capture them.
You were raised by an older sister. Your mustache grew in when you were 10, and I'm sensing, just sensing, an unspoken attraction between you two.
2 out of 3. It's not bad.
Oh yeah, Bolin and Mako get kidnapped. Anyway, back to the whole meeting in the spirit world. It's here that we learn Zahir's ideology. Basically, the goal of the Red Lotus, which is the name of his group, is to dismantle all governments and authorities and plunge the world into anarchy. That the natural order of the world is chaos. We also learned that, in an attempt to connect this season with the last, Unalaq was actually a member of the Red Lotus, but he betrayed them and went rogue with his whole dark avatar harmonic convergence plan. I appreciate that they make an attempt to actually connect this season with the last. A problem with season 1 and 2 is that they feel so disconnected, so even though it's once again pretty obviously a retcon, It's appreciated. Also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but I love how Zahir's character design is a lot less sinister in comparison to Amon and Unalaq. Amon was adorned with dark browns and grays with red accents and a spooky mask. Unalaq was a lot less obviously evil, but he still had a lot of sharp edges and just an overall kind of sinister vibe to him, and they both shared pretty menacing voices, especially in Amon's case. But Zahir, he's mainly made up of gray, a lighter gray compared to any of the gray found on Amon. He has sharp edges, but not as many as Unalaq, and overall, he just kind of looks normal, especially with the hair. And okay, yes, this is a tangent, and I know I'm treading on like CinemaSins levels of criticism here, but I prefer Zahir with the hair. I don't know, I just think it looks cooler and adds on to the normal guy look he has, which I actually think makes him seem more menacing. I get why he's shaved, because he wants to look more like an air nomad. A consistent part of his character is that even before he became an airbender, he was really into air nomad culture, especially, as you've heard,
Gulahima.
Anyway, back on track. Korra and Asami are kidnapped, not by the Red Lotus, but the Earth Queen, as revenge for freeing her airbending slaves. But they manage to escape. Mako and Bolin are also captured, but by the Red Lotus, who bring them to the Earth Queen pretending to be bounty hunters. But when they learn Korra ain't coming, Zahir kills the Earth Queen.
There is no life. There is only darkness.
Yeah, dude, kill her ass. And he also announces to the citizens that she's dead and that the kingdom is now basically in pure anarchy with no leader, in response to which people do what literally every single person would do in that scenario, immediately begin looting every fucking thing. Zahir also lets Mako and Bolin go, but with a message to give Korra, and they soon reunite with her and deliver this message, which is that he's going to attack the Air Temple and wipe them out if Korra doesn't give herself up to him. She tries to contact Zahir in the spirit realm to kind of negotiate, but instead she has another run-in with Iroh. I told you, this is the best season. Also, she meets up with Zuko, and I love him. I can't believe I forgot to mention it, but Zuko shows up a few times this season, and he is just as awkward as always.
She's a powerful firebender named Pali who can create explosions with her mind. Ironically, I hired a guy with a similar ability to kill the Avatar myself once. Didn't work.
I should also mention, this whole wipe out the air nomads if Korra doesn't give herself up displays that Zahir is kind of a hypocrite. Just earlier, he brought up how terrible the genocide of the air nomads was, and he is almost obsessed with their culture and teachings, yet he is fully willing to slaughter a good deal of air nomads if he doesn't get what he wants. He's fully ready to fucking attack them, and most likely cause serious damage to their temples, artifacts, and other such things. Unfortunately, before Korra can warn them, Zahir is already there, and, rounds up all the airbenders, and says that Tenzin can't do anything, to which Tenzin responds by kicking Zahir's ass. Like, the only reason Zahir beats him here is because his friends save his ass. This man was struggling, but unfortunately, him, Bumi, and Kaya, and the other airbenders fail and are captured, leading to Korra eventually giving herself up. Kinda, she does have a plan, but it doesn't really work out. You see, it turns out Zahir was bluffing, and the airbenders weren't at the air temple after he attacked it and captured them. Well, except Tenzin. And when Bolin, Mako, and Asami find Tenzin and realize they were tricked, Ghazan just tries to fucking melt them with lava and then leave them for dead. Luckily, they do manage to escape, and Bolin turns out to be a lava bender. However, unfortunately for Korra, things don't go as well. She's restrained, and a fight breaks out between the Red Lotus and Korra and her allies. And after Korra's allies, deal with Pali.
Pali!
Not gonna lie, when I first watched this show, this death really fucking got me. I was not expecting it. That is straight up brutal. And Zahir is not happy either, as he manages to take Korra out, and when it seems like he's cornered, he leaps off a cliff and... Yep, Zahir can fucking fly now.
They fly now!
I didn't mention it, but one of the main things Zahir mentions about Guru Lahima is that he could fly, and is one of the only airbenders to have such an ability until now. Apparently, the only way to gain such an ability is to let go of your earthly tethers and enter the void. And since Pali was the only thing keeping Zahir tied to, well, the earth, now that she's gone, he can fly.
They fly now!
Oh, shut the fuck up. Anyway, now that Korra has been captured, Zahir finally reveals his plan to her. He plans to put mercury in her blood to poison her, which will force her into the Avatar state, and the moment she does enter the Avatar state, they'll kill her. If you forgot or don't know, if the Avatar is killed in the Avatar state, it will end the Avatar cycle. And this scene is both really intense and terrifying. I feel like this scene has some of the best voice acting from Korra specifically. Her screams are truly haunting. But luckily, not only do the airbenders that are being held there manage to escape, but Bolin, Tenzin, Lin, Mako, and Suyin, I'm getting tired having to say all these names, manage to find Korra and start fighting off the Red Lotus members. Also, what I find kind of funny is that it kind of feels like the Red Lotus didn't plan nearly thoroughly enough, because when Korra actually enters the Avatar state, she just fucking easily escapes and begins having a one-on-one final battle with Zahir, while Bolin and Mako take on Ghazan and Minghua, and they manage to defeat them. Meanwhile, all the airbenders, realizing Korra can't beat Zahir because she's poisoned with mercury, make a giant tornado to suck him down and defeat him, which works, surprisingly. And with Suyin's help, the poison is metal bent out of her body, and someone finally shuts Zahir up. However, Korra doesn't just walk this off. No, she now needs a wheelchair to get around while she recovers, and unlike before, while there is a victory, it's not as triumphant and happy. Zahir didn't leave a lasting consequence on the world like Unalaq, he left a lasting consequence on Korra. Since he nearly killed her, and even though she lived, she needs to take time to recover. However, it's not all doom and gloom as Jinora gets her tattoos at the end. One of my favorite details here is that Jinora really looks like Aang at the end, which I'm pretty sure is to show how terrible of an avatar Korra must feel like right now. This is legitimately her lowest point in the series. Season 3 is fucking stupendous. I love it. The villain is amazing. The whole idea of an evil anarchist airbender is genuinely awesome. And the whole idea of airbenders returning is a really cool setup as well. I do like how they try to connect the Red Lotus with Unalaq, making it feel, a little planned out in comparison to the full-on disconnection between Season 1 and 2. I don't even think Amon is mentioned in Season 2. I also really like the characters this season. In Season 2, they all just felt like a little off, but here they're back to normal. Obviously, there's stuff that annoys me, like the fact that Tenzin's kids still barely do anything and serve little purpose if they aren't named Jinora, and Kai is kind of boring, but overall, I loved this season. I think it's the best season by far. This is the season I see a lot of hardcore Korra fans say is better than Avatar, but I don't agree. It's great, again, my favorite season, but it's not as good as Avatar. I still think it lacks the scale Avatar had. And Zahir, while most certainly menacing, I don't think he has quite the power and just full-on intimidation that Ozai had, or even Azula had. Though he is a far more interesting character than Ozai. Now, of course, there is one last season of Legend of Korra. Funnily enough, despite how controversial it is, it actually has one more season than Avatar. But unlike before, where they just fucking made it up as they went along, the crew actually had a plan. So let's see what they went out with in the last season. Season 4 of Legend of Korra opens up by introducing us to a 3-year time skip. Mako is now the future king of the Earth Kingdom, Prince Wu's bodyguard, Sami is still working on her company, whilst the air nomads, Opal and Kai in particular, are helping out with the chaos in the Earth Kingdom caused by Zahir. Bolin, Varric, and Zhu Li, however, are helping out Kuvira, the Great Uniter, who is also helping solve the current chaos in the Earth Kingdom, and is doing it much more efficiently, though also much more cruelly based on what we hear and see. She's basically conquering these people, villages, all that, and the bandits she finds are forced to work under her under threat of cruel punishment. Yeah, if you couldn't put it together, Kuvira is our final new villain. Or, if you had a keen eye, you may have seen her before. That's right, unlike before, Kuvira isn't some new character made up for the season. You've actually seen her before. She's a minor character in Season 3, being one of the many soldiers that work in Zaofu. My only problem is that she's in the background for most of the season, but then right near the end, they have this close-up shot of her that just lingers way too long, and it makes it obvious she's going to become important later. They should have just made her say, "I'm Kuvira," with no close-up or anything. Again, I know this is like CinemaSins level nitpicking here. It's still really cool that Kuvira is just some minor character in the background. It clearly shows that, unlike before, they really did have like a genuine plan for the next season. And Kuvira in general is a great antagonist as well, and I love the irony that the anarchy Zahir strived for births such a cruel character who's basically planning to become a dictator. By the way, I did neglect to mention what one character is up to nowadays. Korra has now regained the use of her legs, but hasn't fully recovered. She ran away and now is living in a village doing these arena battles, and, well, yeah, she's not doing very well in them. And she's also continuously seeing visions of her chained up in the Avatar state, as the memory of Zahir and the torment he put her through is haunting her. And I'm not gonna lie, just gonna straight up say it, I think this arc Korra has this season is the best arc she's had. It's the best development she's had in the show. And you know they were confident about it, considering the fact that one of the episodes is named after one of the best episodes in Avatar. And you know what? I can't blame them for being so confident. Seeing Korra slowly try getting better with Katara is genuinely both a little sweet and sad. And by the way, sorry, this is off topic, but this makes me want to mention something, and that's the idea that Korra is a Mary Sue. No, I actually genuinely considered just ending this tiny little subsection there, but I feel like I need to go on, because I feel like the people who say Korra is a Mary Sue literally don't know what that word means. See, a Mary Sue is a character in a TV show, book, movie, comic, video game, whatever, that is basically just like overpowered, well-liked, is basically always right, never has any flaws, or I guess I should rather say they never have any meaningful flaws. Basically, they're a character that everyone will like and is always right and is super badass and doesn't really need to work or earn anything. This does not describe Korra at all. Korra has meaningful flaws. She's sheltered, she's hot-headed, and she doesn't usually think things through. She did in fact use firebending while fighting in the middle of an ocean against two waterbenders. Korra has to earn basically everything in the series once she gets to Republic City. Even Tenzin doesn't really respect her and says that pro-bending, a sport she really likes playing, is a mockery of bending. And I would like to mention, in the whole well-liked part, I can think of more characters who are initially hostile to Korra than like her off the bat, not counting like her mom and dad, who would obviously like her. I bring this whole criticism up now because it is more wrong here than it has ever been anywhere else in the series. This is Korra's lowest point after she nearly lost against Zahir and only won because a bunch of airbenders helped her out. Korra is just not a Mary Sue. She's not well liked by everybody, she's not overpowered, she's kinda shit at being the Avatar for a lot of the series actually. She has meaningful flaws, like she's doesn't always think things through, she's hot-headed, and shows little to no interest in spirituality for like half the season, despite it being part of her whole job and destiny, mind you. And she struggles a lot. Again, she nearly died last season and is now barely able to fight anyone with her bending. I'm sorry. This complaint has been around for a while, and it feels like most people who call Korra a Mary Sue just don't know what that term means, because it's basically become a buzzword in more recent times, and people just seem to use it for characters they don't like, whether or not those characters actually, fit the bill. Like, just because you think a character is poorly written doesn't mean they're a Mary Sue. I'm sorry, I know again, that's a bit of a tangent, but this is, about why Legend of Korra was so divisive, and you know how I mentioned that the love triangle is like the first complaint I just get? This is the first complaint that I truly and honestly just cannot accept. I think it is just wrong. I should also mention, I like the focus on Katara. She barely appears throughout the show, which I suppose I'm fine with, but she even barely appears in the season focusing on the Southern Water Tribe. I want you to keep in mind, Katara was the last Southern waterbender, so it's nice that they remedy that here with Katara helping Korra heal, eventually helping her regain her ability to walk. Though, even with that progress, Korra still hasn't fully recovered, as she isn't near the same bender she used to be. I really love this scene. It's a callback to the first time we see Korra. She even tries to do the same moves she did before, but this time, she has a vision of herself chained up and loses. That's genuinely really sad, showing how she's not even able to bend at the same level she was at the beginning of the series. But now, back into modern day, Korra follows a spirit into a swamp and bumps into a very familiar face.
Nice to see you again, Twinkle Toes.
That's right, Toph is back in all her grumpy glory, and she's gonna help Korra with her issues in, well, the most Toph way possible. And she also reveals that Korra actually still has little bits of poison still inside her, and Toph tries to metal bend it out, but Korra keeps resisting until Toph gets fed up and says she'll just have to do it herself. Meanwhile, when Tenzin and Tonrak realize that Korra is, well, missing, both previously believing that she was with the other, Tenzin sends out his kids to go look for her, which, thank God, they finally have something to do. Even if I still feel like Jinora is the only one who, really matters, they do get a little more character, and that's cool. Meanwhile, Ba Sing Se in the Earth Kingdom has been basically fully reunited with Kuvira and her boyfriend Batar Jr.'s help. I didn't really mention him, but he's also a character from Season 3, again, a minor one. Anyway, it's finally time for Prince Wu to be crowned, and he is definitely not ready to be king, as he's super immature and irresponsible. Someone who also seems to be on my side in that front is Kuvira, who, at the coronation, abruptly announces the end of the monarchy, and that she is now the dictator of the Earth Kingdom, or Earth Empire, and she has plans on expanding it, or reuniting it. And she plans to crush whoever gets in their way, or whoever tries to cross their borders. So, not the best coronation I've ever been to. I probably wouldn't put it in my top 10. Also, Bolin, Varric, and Zhu Li are, well, not exactly thrilled to hear about the news of the new dictatorship, but they still remain loyal to Kuvira for now. Also, while this new dictatorship does get in the way of Tenzin's kids' search, it doesn't much. And with Korra's help using the vines in the swamp to connect with Jinora spiritually, they manage to find her. And not only that, Korra manages to bend the last of the poison out of her body, meaning that she can finally re-enter the Avatar state. So she finally returns to the public to help fight Kuvira, whose army is currently marching on Zaofu, trying to get them to surrender peacefully. And if they don't, they're going to invade. And while they're trying to invade Zaofu, Varric and Zhu Li are experimenting with spirit vines. And while Varric wants to make it into a perfect clean power source, he discovers that it also has the potential to be an incredibly devastating weapon, which Kuvira finds much more appealing, and threatens to kill Varric when he tries to refuse to, well, make a super weapon with it. Again, Norway is fucking on to something, because I think we all know Season 2 Varric would make this weapon in a heartbeat. Keep in mind, this was the guy who was committing acts of terror and bombings to start a war. All jokes aside, I genuinely do like Varric's character arc here, learning to care about other people. I also like the new arc they set up for him here as he learns to appreciate Julie. She has the most character here than in the rest of the series, where she barely even speaks. Also, Bolin is led into Kuvira's inner circle, and he realizes that she is definitely evil. So him, Varric, and Julie try to escape her and, well, kinda fail a little spectacularly, despite their best efforts. Now being forced to work on the Spirit Vine weapon, the only one who isn't punished is Julie, who betrays them and tells Varric to go fuck himself, basically. We also get to see Kuvira's backstory here, as after Suyin refused to help the Earth Kingdom when Zahir, caused anarchy in it, Kuvira said they needed to spread their progress to them and the rest of the world. This is legitimately one of my favorite details in the show, because any Avatar fan would know that this is exactly what Fire Lord Sozin said before he started the 100-Year War. And my favorite part is, they don't point this out. They don't make a big deal of it. They don't have some flashback to when Fire Lord Sozin said it. They just let it stay there and leave it for anyone who knows the original show to recognize that this is basically history repeating itself. Anywho, Korra tries to negotiate some kind of peaceful solution to the whole Zaofu crisis, but is unsuccessful as Suyin takes some people and tries to assassinate Kuvira and fails. And Korra, in a last-ditch effort, challenges Kuvira to a duel, and even though Korra nearly wins, entering the Avatar state as a last-ditch effort in this last-ditch effort duel, she's still seeing visions and having flashbacks, despite the fact that the metal is out of her and Zahir is defeated. She's still scared, and this causes her to lose. But she's just barely saved from being killed, because Kuvira was just ready to do it. However, even though she's saved, Kuvira begins her invasion of Zaofu. In lighter news, Varric and Bolin, with some clever thinking by threatening to set off what's basically a nuke, actually manage to escape this time, and they begin making their way to Republic City to warn them of Kuvira's super weapon. Luckily, that's also where Korra is heading, and she finally reunites with Mako and Asami. Also, Prince Wu is there, and is nearly kidnapped after an argument, but luckily they manage to work together and save him. Also, it's not important at all, but this season has an honest-to-God clip show episode. Yes, this is real, and I honestly kind of love it. It's honestly a good break from the tension and such, as this season has been, well, pretty consistently dark, and this episode is very clearly just meant to kind of more be funny. The part where Varric makes up a story about Amon coming back from the dead as a zombie and teaming up with Zahir and Unalaq, specifically his version of Unalaq from his movie in Season 2, and Vatu over a phone call, is fucking great, I won't lie. I'm not gonna lie, again, there's literally no purpose to me bringing this episode up. I just think an Avatar clip show episode is hilarious. Literally in my notes, I just have the words, "mention the clip show episode" written. And, well, I guess there you go, past me. Anyway, back on topic, in Republic City, due to Kuvira harvesting spirit vines, the spirit vines there begin attacking and capturing people. Meanwhile, all the world leaders begin discussing what to do about Kuvira. Korra and Opal also join in on the discussion, and later on, so do Varric and Bolin, finally informing them of the super weapon. And when Korra realizes she needs to go into the spirit realm to find the people kidnapped by the vines who were dragged into the spirit realm, she realizes she needs to get over her fear and trauma of Zahir. So she goes to Zahir's prison cell to show him she's not afraid, which doesn't work. However, Zahir seems to genuinely feel bad. Not about what he did to Korra, no, he has no mercy for what he did, but instead, he feels bad that his plan of anarchy led to the creation of a dictatorship in the Earth Kingdom, which is basically the opposite of anarchy. So he decides to help her out, helping her work through her trauma to enter the spirit realm once again. And she learns that she'll never go back to the way she was before, but she can work through her trauma and not let it define her or consume her. And now she's finally managed to, well, kind of work through it. She's not completely over it. She's not back to how she was. Of course, she never will be. But she can finally be on her A game once again, which is pretty good as Kuvira is furthering development of her super weapon. So Toph, Lin, Opal, and Bolin go out to save Suyin and company and also do something about the giant spirit laser cannon. And tensions between everyone are high. Opal is pissed at Bolin for helping the dictator who kidnapped her family, and Lin isn't really a fan of Toph for just not being a very good mother. But eventually, not only do they achieve their goal of saving Suyin and her friends, they also manage to do something about the spirit cannon after discovering that Zhu Li is a traitor to Kuvira, and she never turned against Varric. That was all a lie. As well, Lin and Toph begin making amends. They're not fully, reconnected and through it all, but they're beginning to, connect once again. Oh, I should also mention here, Toph tells Kuvira off, which is so satisfying. And after everyone's safe and, they've made up a little bit, Toph says that she's not gonna be helping with the possible war, instead wanting to leave it up to the new generation. They also kind of try to use this as an explanation for why Katara didn't do anything in the Southern Water Tribe, but I don't know, that doesn't really feel in character for Katara, even though, to be fair, this is Grandma Katara. And I'd also like to mention Kuvira 100% wouldn't stand a fucking chance against Toph. By the way, during all this, Korra tries to get the spirits on her side to help fight against Kuvira's empire, but the spirits just sorta don't. So after Toph's exit and their tiny victory over Kuvira, Zhu Li reveals that Kuvira is planning to attack Republic City in 2 weeks, so they rush back to Republic City to inform them. And Republic City begins evacuating everyone with the help of Prince Wu and Pema. Also, Varric finally reunites with Zhu Li, but there's still tension between them as he still hasn't fully, learned his lesson of appreciating her and not just bossing her around. But they don't have time for that, so him and Asami begin making flying robots to try and stop Kuvira. Unfortunately though, Kuvira is early, and the final version of the weapon is a massive fucking mech with a spirit cannon on the arm. And seeing this, the president does what any true and powerful, strong leader would do, and just immediately surrenders. Obviously, Korra and the gang just can't take that as an option. So they kidnap Kuvira's boyfriend, Batara Jr., and threaten him, not with death, but just that they'll make sure he never sees Kuvira again. And when Kuvira hears about this, she decides, alright, let's speed up the not seeing you again, and just fucking fires the cannon where the whole message is being sent from, and it nearly kills them all and breaks Batara's heart. So they all devise a plan, with the help of Asami's dad. Yeah, he returns to help save the city by using 2 of the flying mechs they have left to cut into the mech. I didn't mention it before, but there's a few parts where Asami visits him in jail. And this plan works. But Asami's dad sacrifices himself so they can get in. And honestly, it's genuinely a really sad death. Even though he didn't get much screen time, he had a great redemption arc, and this sacrifice is genuinely sad. Oh, also Varric proposed to Zhu Li. Anyway, everyone gets inside the mech and begins slowly tearing it apart, while Korra faces Kuvira one last time, and they win. Lin and Suyin destroy the cannon, so its main purpose is destroyed, while Mako and Bolin destroy its heart, and Korra manages to just barely defeat Kuvira in a duel. Well, it more ends in a tie, but still. But Kuvira flees and tries to get one last fuck you in, as she finds that discarded spirit cannon from the mech that she just threw away when it stopped working, and tries to kill Korra with it. Unfortunately, she didn't really think this through, because once she turns it on, she can't turn it off, and it just keeps firing, and it focuses so much of the energy into one spot that it causes a giant explosion and opens a new spirit portal. Korra and Kuvira are sent through it, and when they awaken in the spirit realm, they have one final talk where Kuvira tries to kind of explain why she did what she did, and that she was an orphan, and she couldn't stand to let all those people not be helped like she wasn't helped, and Korra manages to convince Kuvira to finally surrender. The series ends with Varric and Julie's wedding, and an overall celebration of, well, not starting another 100-year war, and Korra decides to go with Asami into the spirit world as they decide to get together as a couple. Okay, that kinda came out of nowhere, but it's cute, I guess. Season 4 was also amazing. I wouldn't say it's as good as Season 3. Kuvira feels just a bit more shallow than Zahir, and I kinda wish they didn't give her the sudden redemption at the end, and instead had the spirit cannon destroy her, but I don't know. It's still pretty good. And again, Korra and Asami getting together is kinda random, and while initially I thought for years that the reason it kinda just comes out of nowhere right at the end is because of Nick being like, no gay couples, but like apparently Nick actually seems to have been fine with it, so I don't know what was going on there. But overall, a great ending to the series. I loved it. So, what happened? So, what happened to Legend of Korra? Why is this show so divisive? What birthed such a large hatred of this series? Well, I think it comes down to a few things. The first being disconnection. Legend of Korra, as I mentioned earlier, was conceived as just one season, focusing on Korra and the Equalists, and basically just being an epilogue to Avatar. But then, they got another season, and had to fucking scramble to figure out how to continue this story. And the season they came up with, while not being purely fucking diarrhea, like I originally thought it was not only not very good, but also just didn't feel related to the first season at all. The Equalists just vanish, and they're never mentioned again, except for a brief hallucination cameo from Amon in Season 3's finale. No, I'm not counting the clip show episode. And they only feel like they had an actual story planned out by Season 3, and even then, Season 3 and 4 feel pretty disconnected to Season 1 and 2. Compare this to Avatar, which had one continuous, overarching narrative that felt like it was pretty much always progressing, while also telling a pretty good story in each episode. There's really only one episode of Avatar that comes to my mind that I can say is pretty universally agreed on to be bad, and that's The Great Divide. And wouldn't you know, one of the reasons for that is that it feels utterly pointless on top of just not being very good. If you want to know how little this episode matters to the rest of the series, even the creators said you can just skip it.
Look, it's the Great Divide, the biggest canyon in the Earth Kingdom.
Let's keep flying.
Another thing is lack of scale. While great, many of the threats in Legend of Korra are a lot more small scale in comparison to Avatar and the threat of the Fire Nation. Not only are a lot of the villains small scale, it also feels like we barely get to see the world. Avatar was all about exploration. Pretty much every season follows the characters traveling to some new location, which helps flesh out the world and make it feel more real. Meanwhile in Korra, we don't even see anything beyond Republic City, Zaofu, the North, barely, and South Water Tribe, and Ba Sing Se. Despite there being a character named after its ruler, we never get to see Omashu, which is a big deal in Avatar. That's where Aang's childhood friend, his last connection to his previous life before being frozen, lived. And we never hear about it. We also never see the Fire Nation really, despite the fact that the Fire Nation were the main bad guys in Avatar. and Zuko becoming the Fire Lord and beginning to reform their nation was literally how Avatar ended. And not only do we not see the Fire Nation much, we also barely see Zuko. Zuko barely does anything in the show. We barely even get to see his reaction to Korra having met Iroh. Like, yeah, the little interaction they do have when she mentions it and Zuko is all shocked is really cute, but him and his nation and the way things have changed is barely expanded upon. I can speak for most people when I say that with an idea like this, I think I would like to see more of how the world progressed, instead of just Republic City being this hotspot for all progression and technology. And finally, I feel like the last thing that divided the fan base is Korra, or more broadly, Team Avatar. Now, hold on. I like Korra. I think she's a great character, and the development she goes through is amazing. However, I can definitely see how some people who are big fans of Aang can find Korra annoying. You know, considering the fact she's meant to be the opposite of Aang very clearly. She's hot-headed, doesn't think things through, and is very much not spiritual. But I will say, the fact that so many people don't like her does lead to there being some unfair criticisms out there. Again, people mentioning that she's a Mary Sue, even though she doesn't fit the definition at all. And then there's the other people who will say, oh, it doesn't make sense that she struggles to airbend whenever it should be firebending because she was born a waterbender, when it's pretty clearly explained that it's more to do with personality rather than just whatever nation you came from. Aang was the most airbender to ever airbend, so it makes sense he'd struggle with Earth, which is the opposite of air. However, Korra has a much more fiery spirit, so it makes sense that she wouldn't struggle to firebend, but airbending, that may be a problem. And as I said, more broadly than just Korra, I think Team Avatar are also part of the reason this series is so divisive. In Avatar, Team Avatar, or the gang, is pretty solid, and they have great chemistry. They dabble with romance, but the only romance that really happens in Team Avatar is Katara and Aang. And also Suki and Sokka. I do count Suki as a part of Team Avatar. Meanwhile, Team Avatar 2 in Korra was completely caught up in love triangles and romance, and when they finally weren't, they were really aggressive with each other. Team Avatar in this show has way more bad than good between each other. Hell, for a lot of the show, Team Avatar is just not together. They're just split up. They even acknowledge in the show how much they are always getting into fights with each other compared to them just being friends. Meanwhile, in Avatar, the team would get into fights quite a bit. That wasn't unheard of, but they really rarely would split up completely. Like, it was kind of a big deal when they spent a few episodes apart. Meanwhile here, Team Avatar is split up most of the time. The only season I can think of where they're together for a very good majority of it are Season 1 and Season 3. Season 2 and Season 4, they are split up for most of it. That is half of your show. So it can get really annoying when these characters, who do have some great chemistry with each other, don't really get to interact much. Especially when I think that Team Avatar and their chemistry is one of the main fundamentals that makes Avatar such a good show. I think if Avatar had all these well-written characters, but they just worked terribly off each other, that show would be fucking shit, even if the lore was amazing, even if it had some great themes and messages. If these characters didn't work off each other, or were just split up for most of it, I don't think Avatar would work, and I don't think it would be nearly as beloved. So, why was Legend of Korra so divisive? Well, I think it's these three things, but things like this are typically more complicated than that. Some people just don't like change. They don't like new things. Some people just don't like the show, and they don't really know why. They just don't find it as enjoyable as Avatar, which is fine. We as people are typically more complex and ideas about why a show is so divisive is typically a lot more complex, and it's kind of hard to boil it down, but I really think these 3 things are the main reasons among most people that it's so divisive. What do I think of the show? Well, I don't think these flaws ruin the show. I love it, but I can definitely see how they could for some people. If I were to describe Legend of Korra, and I hope this way I describe it makes sense, a mixed bag, but a really good mixed bag. Like, there's just a lot of good ingredients in that bag. I personally think it's pretty good, blemishes and all. And if you're someone who hated it when it first aired, or someone who hasn't seen it because of all the hate, maybe check it out. Maybe you'll think it's amazing. Maybe you'll tell me how Season 2 is actually one of the greatest pieces of fiction ever written, and Zahir is a little bitch. Go ahead and tell me in the comments. If you didn't like it, tell me that too. And if you did, well, you get the point. Just go ahead and tell me your thoughts in the comments, both on the show and my video if you want. I think that's it for me. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't, I don't know what you could do at this point, honestly. I've tried. I can't come up with a new idea for this every time. If you want to see more from me, subscribe, turn on notifications. I have way more videos coming very soon. I've been Emerald, and I'm gonna go watch something else. And bye.